Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to talk to you about passing data between activities inside of an Android application. So the source code that I'm going to use for this video to demonstrate this is online. You can find it at github.com/foamyguy/passDataExample. So come to this page here, check out this project. You can either download it with the zip, or if you got a Git client you can use this URL right here to download that. Go ahead and download it, get it imported into Eclipse. So this is an example project that's going to show you how you can pass data back and forth between activities. So to demonstrate that, I'm actually going to pull up the emulator here running this program first, and I'm going to talk about what this app is, kind of how it works, and then we're going to dive into the source code. So in the first activity here, we got choose a color, and we got a drop down with red, green, blue inside there that's going to let us pick whatever color we want. So let's pick blue for right now, and an enter button. So when we click this enter button, we're going to go to a second activity. Now you can see the background in the second activity is blue, and it's that way because that's what I chose in the spinner. So that first activity actually passed along the value that I chose, and then inside the second activity it set the background to that value. So if we go back one, we can choose green, and now the background's green. So it's passing along whatever choice we made to this second activity. So that's one instance of passing data, is we're going to pass that choice from the spinner along to the second activity. Now the other instance of passing data in this sample application is going to be once we click this done button here. So we're going to enter in, we got two edit texts, one of them says name and one of them says favorite word. These are just arbitrary fields that I kind of felt like throwing together inside this application, so you can enter in whatever you want to really, but let's go ahead and do what it says. We'll say Tim is my name, and I don't know, my favorite word, let's say blueberry. Blueberries are pretty tasty, so enter in that. Now we click done, and now we can see the text up here, it changed to hello Tim, so it got that word, that name from that other activity, and then it also got, favorite word is blueberry. So we got both of those values back from that second activity. So this demonstrates passing data in both directions. We passed the value from this color picker onto the other activity, and then we passed the name and the favorite word back. So let's go ahead and dive into the source code here inside of Eclipse and take a look at what makes this happen. So inside this project we got two activities, first activity, second activity, and then we also got a my data object. So let's dig into the first activity first, and let's look at the layout for it, and that is this layout right here. And it's pretty basic. We got just a text view, a spinner, and a button. If you've never used spinner before, that's an interesting one. That's what gives you the drop down list, and you can see this attribute here, Android entries, and we set it to array colors. So that's actually inside the strings file. We have a string array, name, colors, and we got those three values, red, blue, green, inside there. So by putting Android entries and then @array/colors into this spinner, it will automatically populate with the strings from the strings array here inside the strings file. Then we got the last thing is just an enter button. So that's it for the layout in the first activity. Let's take a look at the first activity.java. So okay, inside here we got a few things. We're gonna have references for our spinner, our button, and our text view. And then inside onCreate we say set content view to activity first, and that's the layout we just looked at. We'll use find view by ID here to find all of our views out of the layout. Then we got to set an on-click listener on the enter button. So enter button, set on-click listener, new on-click listener, and inside of our on-click method we make a intent object. I'm going to call it second activity intent right here, and we say equals new intent. And when you make a new intent, one of the constructors takes two parameters. The first one is a context. So here I'm going to use this v.getContext. Now v gets passed to the onClick method. That's the view that got clicked. So view has a method called getContext, which will get the context of that view. So I could have used like first activity dot this or get application context. There's lots of different ways I could have got the context. In this instance here, I did v.get context. The second parameter that it takes is a class. So we're going to pass second activity dot class. That's going to be the activity that we want to launch. So, and remember, when we go from the first one to the second one, we're going to pass along the position that got selected inside of the color spinner here. So we say second activity intent dot put extra, and the extras inside of an intent, those are like name value pairs basically. So when we say put extra, we have to give it both a name and a value, and you're allowed to put extras as lots of different data types. In this instance right here, we're going to be using int, but you can also do string and double and long and all kinds of other data types. And we'll look at one more in this example, but for right now we're going to do just int. So we say put extra. The name that we want is going to be color, and that's just an arbitrarily chosen string, and that's just the string we're going to have to use when we want to get this data back out of the intent on the other side. So whatever you put here for put extra, you have to use the same string when you do get extra on the other side. So we're going to call ours color, and then the value that we're going to pass is colorspin.getSelectedItemPosition. So that will pass whatever position is currently selected inside of the color spinner. So once we have our intent all made, we got the extras put onto it, we're going to go start activity for result, and we're going to say second activity intent, that's the intent we just created, and then we're going to pass a number here, and this number is the request code. Basically what a request code is a unique integer that you're going to use to determine, once you get back from your other activity, you're going to use this to determine what you were doing there. So like, let's say if you had a little bit more complex application where you had multiple different things that you could start for results, you would want to use a different number here for each one of those things, and then inside your on activity result further down here, you would have an if statement and you check against that number so that you know which thing you're coming back from. But in this one, we only have one thing that we're starting for a result, so it's not terribly important what we chose, so I just chose 42. So that's it for the enter button, and that's also going to be everything that we have inside onCreate. So the only other thing we have inside this first activity is an onActivity result, and I'm gonna skip that for right now because that's going to be after we come back from the second activity. We're going to come to here. So I'm going to talk about the second activity first, and then I'll come back and wrap it up with this. So, and even before we get to the second activity, I'm going to take a look inside this myData object. So this is just an arbitrary data object I made. The only thing it's got are two strings inside of it. We got, you know, a default constructor and some getters and setters for each of those values. And you'll notice here, implements Parcelable. So if you're familiar at all with serializable interface, Parcelable is very similar to that, but instead of saving data on the disk, like saving an arbitrary object on the disk, it allows you to add an arbitrary object as an extra to an intent, which means you can pass it back and forth between activities. So this myData object, this is just an example one that I created that holds these two strings, but obviously this same concept will apply to whatever object you have, no matter how much more complex it is than this. So by implementing Parcelable, we're allowing ourselves to be able to put this data object as an extra on an intent, which that's what we need to do in order to be able to pass it between activities, is add it as an extra. So once we implement Parcelable, we have to do a few things to allow for this behavior. One of them is right here, we got to make a constructor that takes a parcel. So it says parcel p is the parameter, and inside the constructor we say this.name equals p.readString, and this.favoriteWord equals p.readString. So obviously if you got a different object, you're going to have, you know, different datas stored inside there, so you'll set your own data instead of these ones, but mine, I just got name and favorite word. So that's what I have to do here, and the order here is important. We're going to see that in just a second, why this order matters. So we got getters and setters, describe contents. This is another method you need. Once you implement Parcelable, it'll make you implement this method. For now, I'm not actually using it, so I just return 0. But in a more complex example, you might return something different here other than 0. And then one of the other things you need here is a write to parcel method. So you got to override this method, and it takes two parameters, a parcel and a flag. We are ignoring the flag for right now, but we are going to use this parcel parameter here. So what we need to do inside here is we say parcel.writeString, and then I'm going to use name as the parameter for the first one, and then parcel.writeString and favorite word. So basically whatever order we used up here, we need to make sure to use the same order down here. So we did name first and then favorite word, and so down here we got to use the same order, name first, favorite word second. So obviously if you got more data, let's say if you had 10 different data objects, some strings and some ints and all kinds of things, you just got to make sure whatever order you put them in up here, you got to use the same exact order down here. So the last thing that we need for this parcelable to work for us is kind of strange here, but it's public static parcelable.creator, and then it's a generic, so we put whatever type of object this is inside the greater than less than signs there, and we want to call it creator with all capital letters. Now it's important that you call it this word here, creator, with all capital letters, because the system is going to be looking for this object to use it, and it's going to look only for this name, so you got to make sure to name it this. And it's basically new parcelable.creator, again my data object, and then we override some methods here, create from parcel. Basically just we return that constructor that we created up here. So we say return new my data object, and source is a parcel parameter that we get right here, and then the only other method it needs is a new array, and you pass it a size and it will return an array of these objects. So we're not going to use the array, but it will make you have this method as well, so you can go ahead and put it in even if we're not going to use it. But another cool thing about Parcelable is that it does support arrays. So let's say if you wanted to pass an array of 10 or 100 of these objects back and forth, you could do that. So that's everything inside the MyData object. Now let's check out the second activity. So this is going to be the activity when we push enter, we're going to the second activity. So this is what we're looking at right now. So let's check out first the layout actually. Second activity second. Okay, so inside this one, it's not much more complex. We got edit text for name, we got an edit text for favorite word, then we got a done button and a cancel button underneath that, and that's it. And our parent layout is a relative layout. So that's the only thing we got here. We need to make sure that we put an ID on the relative layout, because we're going to want to get a reference to that so that we can change the color of it. So we got to make sure we have an ID to use with find view by ID. So now let's take a look at secondactivity.java. And again, there's not a whole lot going on inside here, but let's work through it. We got edit text, name text, edit text, word text. So that's going to be the two edit texts, obviously, that we got right here. And then inside on create, we set content view. We say, okay, so here's where we're going to pull out the color value that got passed to us. So this is whatever position got selected in the spinner got added onto that intent. We'll just refresh it right here. It got added on to this intent as an extra. So inside second activity, we're going to pull it out of there. So we say int color position equals this dot get intent dot get int extra, and then that name. So we say color because that's the name we used, and then you also have to give it a default value. So I used a default value of 0. Basically what that means is if you try to pull this extra out here, this color, and it's not there, then this method is going to return to you whatever int you put here. So we're saying if for whatever reason we didn't have this data, we just want to use 0 and go ahead. So we get color position, and then we just got a pretty basic if-else here that checks the color position and changes the background to whatever color we chose. So that's how we're setting up that. After that, we got name text is find view by ID, word text, same thing. Then we get the done button and the cancel button, we get references to those, and we're going to set on click listeners. So let's look at the done button on click listener first. We say intent result intent equals new intent, and then we say my data object equals new my data object right here with the default constructor, and then we go ahead and say data.setName to name text get text toString and set favorite word to word text get text toString. So we're setting inside this data object that we're creating the name and the favorite word based on whatever was entered into those two edit texts. From there we say result intent.putExtra, and we'll use the name data this time, and that's also the same name as our object, so we'll go ahead and add that in. And remember, the reason we're able to put this as an extra is because we implemented Parcelable with this object. If we hadn't done that, we wouldn't be able to use putExtra and just add this whole object right here. So we did use Parcelable, so we can add that in. Then we're going to say set result equals result OK, and the data intent. So set result is a method of context, and it takes two parameters. The first one is the result code, and the second one is an intent that has some data attached to it with extras. So the result code is basically like, did we complete okay, or did the user cancel, or has something gone wrong? So in this instance, when they press the done button, we want the result okay, and then we're going to add the result intent, which we just created here, and we added the data object as an extra to it. So we set result, and then the last thing we do from the done button is we call finish. The only other thing we got inside here is the cancel button, and inside there we say set result and result canceled. Now in this one we have only one parameter because we got no data to pass back in this case. This means if we press the cancel button, so we didn't enter any text into those boxes, so we just want to go back to the first activity and let it know that the user canceled without choosing anything. So we say set result is result canceled, and then we just call finish. So now let's go jump back to the first activity inside of onCreate. This is onCreate method is where we're going to come back to once the second activity finishes. So no matter if it got canceled or it finished correctly, in any case it's going to come back to onActivityResult in the first activity. And you can see onActivityResult has three parameters. It has the request code, the result code, and the intent that has data. So the request code is whatever int we passed up here with start activity result. That's going to give us the exact same int back down here. The result code is whatever we set as the result from inside the second activity. So we set, with the done button, we set result OK. With the cancel button, we set result canceled. So that's what that is. And then intent is the data. So in the case that we pushed done, remember we added that object to the intent as an extra. So this is going to be where we pull that extra out of there and use the data. So we say if result code equals to 42 and if result code equals result OK, then we will say my data object dat equals the intent right here, data dot get parcelable extra, and we pass it the same name that we used back here when we added it to the intent. So we use the string data here and we use the string data here. That's going to pull our whole entire data object out of that intent for us. And then we can see, we got a greeting text, or a greeting string rather. We say hello dat.get name, your favorite word is, and dat.get favorite word, and then we set that greeting on the label, which is the text view back here, this top one that says choose a color when we first start this app, but once we come back from the second activity we set it to this greeting string here. Then the only other thing we got is else if result code is canceled, we are going to make a toast that says canceled. So notice if we go to the second activity, let's say pick a different color just to see that work. Go to the second activity, if we push the cancel button, you can see we come back and we get that toast pop up here with the canceled in it. Another interesting thing to note is while we're in the second activity, if we hit the back button, it's the same as if we had hit the cancel button. So you see we got that same toast there. So that's it for now. That's how you can pass data, both primitive types like integer. We passed a primitive integer forward to the second activity to tell it which color to use, and then we passed a an actual custom data object back from the second activity to the first activity. So that's an introduction to passing data between activities. I hope you guys found this video useful, and if you did, please subscribe to the YouTube channel because there will be a lot more videos coming up there soon. Thanks for watching, guys.